And we're going to start with, I guess, what we would call the bad news. Certainly the bad news if you were someone who had Justin Fields on your dynasty roster.
Yeah.
He is traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a bag of footballs. No, it's a 6th round pick that could turn into a 4th round pick based on playing time. And this is like a mixed bag, to be sure, because he's going there to back up Russell Wilson. In theory, there will be some little competition, I guess, but I think Wilson's going to start week 1. Wilson's there on a veteran minimum contract, hasn't looked like himself the last 2 or 3 seasons, just a 1-year deal. So there is, like, if you were going to go be a backup, there were worse places that you could have gone to be a backup. But still, this is a guy who, anytime he was in the starting lineup for the Chicago Bears, he was in the starting lineup for your fantasy roster. He's young enough. He's got that rushing profile. He was my QB9. He is now and that was not just like last week. That was last month before we realized that nobody wanted to trade anything for Justin Fields. He's fallen now to QB 18 for me. And I almost wonder if that's too high. I wrote today about the fact that I can't believe I now have Will Levis ranked higher than Justin Fields in Dynasty. It feels super gross. But I don't know for sure that Justin Fields is going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL again. Can you offer me any hope?
Well, I mean, the biggest hope I can offer you is that he's going to get out there next year, right? And so I think the elephant in the room is someone's got to get him a contract after this year. So the question is, like, can he play well enough in Pittsburgh? Let's say Russell Wilson doesn't play well. And I saw Russell Wilson working out with sunglasses on, so I'm assuming he's not going to play well. So if you got Justin Fields, you hope that he gets out there around like week 7 or 8, right? And then he does enough, and he's done enough in that room to where they give him that deal, like a Baker deal, like that front-loaded 2-year deal in terms of like, hey, he's going to be there for 2 years. That's probably best case scenario for Justin Fields. But like you mentioned, when he is out there, he's a must start in fantasy. I mean, he was QB5 in fantasy points per game in 2022, 23, he was QB12. And I just keep going back to all the people that are starting out there, like Aiden O'Connell, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. Some of these other guys that like are out there, like Justin Fields has to be able to find a role. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he does do a Baker Mayfield like path, but maybe it's not with the Steelers. Maybe then the following year, team misses out on a quarterback, or one of these teams draft a quarterback and doesn't pan out. Kind of like what we've been seeing. Like I feel like Justin Fields is always going to have kind of like upside because someone's going to put him on the field. If he gets out there, you plug him in. But in Dynasty right now, he is a hold. Like you're not moving Justin Fields unless you can get a first or something back for him. The best hope that you have is that he assimilates really well in that system. He does really well with the coaching staff. They like him. And that coaching staff decides to bring him back the following year, maybe on a 1 or 2 year prove it deal, and they move on from Russell Wilson. That's the best hope you probably have.
And to that point, we know that Arthur Smith loves backup running backs. Mm-hmm. And he loves backup tight ends.
Yeah.
Maybe he will find a backup quarterback that he loves here more than his starter. And we can see more Justin Fields than Russell Wilson. I agree with you. There's no chance I'm selling Fields right now off this news. I do think it's interesting in a super flex league to think about buying. Mm-hmm. And I think it's definitely a round 2 pick that you're talking about if you're doing that. What's the earliest pick that you would give for Fields in a super flex?
Yeah, I mean, he's in that purgatory stage of like the owner probably doesn't want to move him and the other guy doesn't want to buy him for that price. But if I had to put a valuation on him, I would not mind if I'm a contender and I need that third quarterback and I'm willing to take it. The 201, the 202, okay. Early second to me is fine if you're going to take the shot on there knowing the risk that's involved.
Now, that wasn't the only trade that the Steelers made. In fact, they've got like 3 of them here. But Diontae Johnson's now on the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
And he's going to try to go fulfill that Adam Thielen role, I guess, from last year, although it's a different offense now, as you mentioned, Dave Canales there. And Johnson has been a bit of an enigma in Dynasty because one of the, if not the best, one of the best route runners in the NFL. The dude can get open. Mm-hmm. He has had a very difficult time turning that ability into fantasy production, especially recently. Now, he's played with some awful quarterbacks. We've got questions about the quarterback he's playing with this year, although I think there's at least more upside with Bryce Young than there is with Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph or the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger. Do you view this as an upgrade for Diontae Johnson just because, kind of a fresh start, maybe more target opportunity? I had him at wide receiver 44. I did upgrade him, actually. I've got him in the 30s now, wide receiver 34. Where are you at on Johnson?
Yeah, I have him at 33. And to me, this is a smash upgrade for him because of
Okay.
the offense he's going into. Dave Canale's offense, like when you're diving into it. So I just did a big piece for Football Guys that's coming out this week on Bryce Young. I was kind of looking at like risky quarterback. So I did like a deep dive into Canale's offense. The biggest thing that you mentioned about Diontae Johnson, he's an elite route runner. You know what Dave Canales loves? Elite route runners, because he actually doesn't label his wide receivers. So the one thing that I was mentioning when I was diving into like his offense, he doesn't name them slot or outside. They run the whole route tree, and then he just fits them into his offense how he sees fit. I think that's why they wanted Diontae Johnson, because this kid can run anywhere. He can run from the slot, outside. He can he's not that traditional X, Y, whatever you want to call him and how you want to label him there. So I do think they have a plan for them, right? Like I always listen to Bucky Brooks and Daniel Jeremiah, and they always talk about coaching staffs having a plan for the players that they acquire. They have a plan for Diontae, and he's going to fit into that mold for Canale's offense. And you know what he's going to get? He's going to get targets, because there's no one else on that roster that I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to earn some targets there. So targets are going to be there plenty. I think he's a fun buy right now, early second, if you can get him in terms of valuation there. And I love what he's been able to do with quarterback play. He made Geno Smith look serviceable. He got Geno Smith that second contract. He got Baker Mayfield that second contract. And you know, when Russell Wilson had the best year of his career the last 5 years was when he was the quarterback coach. So when you're thinking of like all the positives going into Dave Canale's offense and what he's been able to do there, that's going to lead to Diontae Johnson. I think he's a fun 2-year buy for me. But I also am a Diontae Johnson truther. So everybody listening out here, just know I love the guy as a player. I've been really, frustrated with him the last couple of years. So definitely comes from a biasy of just thinking that he's very talented, but he's finally in an offense I think is going to placate his strengths.
Well, I've been a Diontae Johnson doubter, and I've got him one spot behind you, and I agree wholeheartedly with buying at an early second round cost. So 100% on board with that, even from a guy who hasn't been as optimistic about Diontae Johnson. A guy I was pretty optimistic about for several years was Mike Williams. He signed with the Jets on a pretty small contract. He was my wide receiver 46. He actually went backwards to wide receiver 54. And part of that is I don't love where he signed and the fact that he's only got a 1-year contract and his injury history. The other part is the Jets are talking like they don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. They're pretty concerned about his injury timeline. I think that's why he was unable to get a multi-year contract. This is not a guy that I'm particularly optimistic about this year, and at 29 years old, maybe for the future. Do you have any more hope than I do?
No, I've never really been a Mike Williams guy. I don't love him with that turf out there at MetLife either. Like I'm concerned about his knees and everything there. He just can't stay healthy. And I think that if the Jets do kind of look at that line, I think that there is a possibility the Jets go after an offensive player in the draft too. Maybe not in the first round, but I don't see him having that long-term effort. If there's any way you could pivot off of Mike Williams to any type of other asset, I think you have to do that, right? Like I saw Mike Williams go straight up for Zamir White. And while I don't think Zamir White is like a valuation of like, yes, he's going to be the guy in Las Vegas, I think I'd rather have the shot on the running back that could have the volume if I needed to, and I can pivot to get a little younger. If there's anywhere I can pivot Mike Williams to get younger out there, even like a late second, I would definitely do that right now. Kind of get out of there. Even as a contender, I think that you can get some of that late second that's going to give you more production and more consistent, right? Because Mike Williams' biggest thing is I can't plug him in my lineup because he's just inconsistent.
Yeah, you don't ever know when again, we have this discussion all the time. If you're talking about a wide receiver or 3 or a flex, those guys like that, I kind of like he might score me 4 points 3 weeks in a row, but he might get me 30 next week.
That's fair.
And so, but yes, I mostly agree with you that even as someone who's been pretty excited about Mike Williams, I'm having a hard time. Now you mentioned Zamir White, and I think that's an excellent transition. You're clearly a pro. We've got 3 running backs here. Rico Dowdle staying with the Dallas Cowboys. Alexander Madison signs with the Raiders to join Zamir White. And then Deontay Foreman signs with the Browns. I've got these guys ranked between running back 60 and 75 with Dowdle the highest. Let's start with him. Do you have any hope that he is anything more than he was last year?
I think that I don't know what Dallas is doing. And as a Dallas fan out there, like I do think that they're going to definitely target a running back either round 2 or 3. I know I hear a lot of noise about Lloyd and Trey Benson and these guys. So where Dowdle is at, I think he's a very high-end backup, though. Like, I think that he could assume that role. Like, he had some games last year. I think against the Giants, I think that he had a touchdown, almost like 60 yards, something like that. Like, he showed some flashes. I do know the coaching staff likes him. So to me, like, yeah, I mean, as far as value goes in Dynasty, because running backs really, the running back market's completely changed now. It's basically, what can they do for me now? Like, what are they going to do for me now? Even the top guys. Okay, are they going to stay healthy and do those things? I think Dowdle finds himself in a pretty fun running back 2 role because he's the depth chart running back 2. And I think that after the draft, probably, and he has some value, definitely, and you can move off of him, pivot him. That's where I kind of lean with Dowdle on a lot of these running backs. Like, do they have any value moving forward? Can I move off of them? Can I kind of trade him for another asset? Or can I plug him in a pinch in Dynasty? Like, okay, these guys are injured. Will he have that? I think he has upside there.
Okay, a little bit of optimism. And most of the response I saw to the Alexander Mattison signing was, "This is fantastic news for Zamir White."
Yeah.
That you mostly agree. Like, I assume they're going to draft somebody on day 3. It sounds to me like Zamir White's going to be the starting running back, and I don't think Madison's going to matter all that much. Would you agree?
Yeah, Madison, to me, I've never been a Madison guy. You know how you have those people that were never really that guy. Yeah. Madison, to me, I was always a pivot off, trade him. I've been on record doing that. I think they like Zamir White, and I think that coaching staff is one of those guys that kind of will ride the hot hand. I mean, he was a workhorse he averaged 23 touches down the stretch. They love this kid, and I think that's really where it lines. Madison's just probably insurance. It wouldn't shock me to see Madison get cut in the preseason, like if they draft somebody and they like somebody else.
Speaking of that, it wouldn't shock me all that much to see Foreman get cut in the preseason, but I do wonder, because I'm very skeptical that Nick Chubb's going to be ready for week 1. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be that surprised if he starts the season on the PUP with the significance of that knee injury, his stage of his career.
Yeah.
Do you think Foreman matters all in relation to Jerome Ford as a potential early season starter?
I think it's more about what they're trying to do in that offense, right? Getting Jerry Jeudy. I think they're going to be more pass happy in terms of like that offense. I know Stefanski usually isn't, but they're trying to placate Watson for whatever that is. Like, I think they're trying to figure out a way to kind of assimilate him into it with Flacco, kind of do what we did last year. So I don't know how many opportunities are going to be there. I'm always a volume guy when it comes to running backs. I'm very old school like that. Like, I used to draft, those standard leagues out there. Volume. Jerome, to me, is definitely that volume there. I actually like Naheem Hines a little bit in terms of if he's going to stay there as a pass catcher, those type of things. Pierre Strong, those type of guys. Foreman does not move the needle for me probably whatsoever. I mean, he might have a little bit upside at the beginning. He kind of reminds me of, like, when you're looking at, what he was last year with Chicago, right? Like, he could maybe pop out there early in the season, and he never did. And I think that's kind of the same role he has.
I would agree. One more piece of news from last week, one more Steelers trade. Kenny Pickett headed to the Philadelphia Eagles. Do we even have to hold on to him in a super flex league?
No.
Cut.
Kenny's done.
Make room for him. Your rookie draft, you need to make a 4th round pick. You can cut Kenny Pickett and make that pick.